Hey, it's Alan, and I just wanted to let you know that you can now listen to the ongoing history of new music early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. If there is an official mission statement for the kind of music we all love, it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. These are the three main food groups in this world. All three of these things affect the same portions of the brain: the amygdala, the nucleus accumbens, and the cerebellum. All of them are involved in the secretion and regulation of dopamine, the feel-good hormone. Dopamine is a very addictive hormone. Whenever our brains squirt it out, the body goes, "This is good. I want more." It happens when we hear a great song. It happens with certain drugs and alcohol, which is the basis of addiction. And it happens with an orgasm. Once you're inside this bubble, you may find things rather permissive. As long as you're producing, people will look the other way. There's no one to tell you no. And it doesn't take long for some people to get lost in this world. They come to believe that normal rules of polite society do not apply. You're special, meaning that you can do anything. And that's when your judgment starts to become, how shall I put this, suspect. That's when things start to get strange. How strange? Well, welcome to a show all about rock and roll and tales of weird sex.
This is the Ongoing History of New Music podcast with Alan Cross.
That's Berlin, the American band with Sex Ima, that was played on Top 40 radio for a while in 1982. It reached as high as number 62 on the charts and would have probably gone higher if a bunch of radio stations hadn't banned it on the grounds that it was obscene. MTV only played it sporadically for the same reason. Canadians, by the way, were much cooler about it. It made it all the way to number 4, its best chart performance anywhere in the world. Hello again, I'm Alan Cross, and if tales of weird sex mixed with rock and roll makes you queasy, well, maybe this episode is not for you. But if you're at all interested in the sex part of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you might find this interesting. And, who knows, maybe you'll get some ideas. But I must be indemnified against everything, okay? If you're cool with that, let's just go. Let's just plunge right in. We'll begin with this golden oldie. Did David Bowie ever get it on with Mick Jagger? This is a story that's been around for decades and doesn't seem to want to go away. The origin of this rumor was the Joan Rivers show on May 4th, 1990. Joan's guest that night was Angela Bowie, David's wife between 1970 and 1980. So in other words, she was with him during the biggest and weirdest years of his career. After 10 years under a gag order, the divorce settlement prevented her from talking about the marriage for the entire decade of the 80s, Angie could not wait to talk about what she had seen. On the show with Joan that night, she said, "I caught David in bed with Mick Jagger." Yes, they were naked, but that was it for the details. But since Bowie had professed some sort of bisexuality in the 70s, there was some believability to this. Jagger came out swinging, denying everything. Bowie's lawyer put out a letter that read, "Any implication that there was ever a gay affair between Mick Jagger and David Bowie is an absolute fabrication." Angie backpedaled a bit. The story became, "They were passed out in my bed." And when her autobiography was published in 1993, the story became, "I just assumed they were having sex. I didn't actually have any proof." All of this is made even more murky by the rumors that Angie and Mick might have had an affair while she was married to Bowie, hence the Stones song Angie. However, some believe that Angie was really just code for David. Believe what you want, but also feel free to look up the video for this song and make whatever judgment call you see fit. When this video was incorporated into an episode of Family Guy, they played the whole thing. Let's just do that here. Yeah. So to quote Peter Griffin,
that happened and we all let it happen.
When Alanis Morissette released Jagged Little Pill in 1995, people were shocked at how this pop star with the poofy hair had graduated into this angry young woman. Specifically, who was she singing about in the song You Oughta Know? It might be Mike Peluso, ex of the New Jersey Devils and the Ottawa Senators. Alanis is from Ottawa, after all. Doug Gilmour from the Toronto Maple Leafs has been mentioned. It might be Matt LeBlanc from Friends. He appeared in one of Alanis' videos during her pop star phase. It might be Bob Saget. It might be Leslie Howe, a member of Alanis' backup band for her first two albums. Or it might be Ryan Reynolds. But he dated Alanis between 2002 and 2004, years after the song came out, so that seems to disqualify him. It took a while, but it appears that the ex-boyfriend in question is Dave Coulier, an American stand-up comic and the guy who played Joey Gladstone in the sitcom Full House. He is on record as saying that certain things in the song really sounded familiar. He went out with Alanis in the early 90s and broke up with her in 1994, right as she was starting to work on material for Jagged Little Pill. Or it could be just a composite of all those people and more. Alanis has said this: "Well, I've never talked about who my songs were about, and I won't, because when I write them, they're written for the sake of personal expression. So, with all due respect to whoever may see themselves in my songs, and it happens all the time, I never really comment on it because I write these songs for myself, not other people." Whatever the case, it still must be an interesting thing to go to a movie with Alanis.
It's not fair to deny me all the cross I bear that you gave to me. You ought to know.
Our next story has to do with Anthony Kiedis of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. After his parents went through a divorce, he stayed with his mom most of his time, but spent summers with his dad in California before he moved out there full-time at the age of 12, telling his friends that dad was going to help him be a movie star. I mean, how bad could that be? What could possibly go wrong? Anthony's dad went by the name of Blackie Dammit. He was a bit part actor and had a side hustle selling drugs to the beautiful people in and around Hollywood. Here's a quote from Anthony's memoir, Scar Tissue. "When I was about 4, my dad and I were on one of our outings walking down Sunset Strip when he suddenly stopped and gently blew some pot smoke in my face. We walked a few more blocks and I was getting more and more excited. Then I stopped and asked, 'Dad, am I dreaming?' 'No, you're awake,' he said." He was 4. Dad hung out in a lot of clubs along the Sunset Strip, and he was always bringing home hot women to the house on Palm Avenue. One night, a few days after Anthony arrived, and he's 12 at this point, Dad took him out clubbing. The place they hit was where one of Blackie's current girlfriends was, she was dancing. A few days later, Anthony went into the kitchen to find one of Dad's friends sitting at the table. Mellowed out by a joint, a camera was produced and some pictures were taken. From then on, Anthony and Dad did all kinds of things together. One adult who became friends with Anthony was Keith Moon. Now imagine that. You're not even a teenager and one of your adult role models is Keith Moon. One night, Anthony and Dad were at the Rainbow on Sunset. Anthony was mellowed out by a Quaalude Dad had given him. Did I mention he was 12? Anyway, he passed over a note to his father, and it went something like this: "I know this is your girlfriend," referring to another woman at the bar, "but I'm pretty sure she's up for the task. So if it's okay with you, can we arrange a situation where I end up having sex with Kimberly tonight?" Dad thought it over and said, "Okay." A deal was struck with Kimberly, who was apparently quite into the idea, and everybody went back to the house. Dad sat and watched TV while Anthony and Kimberly, did I mention he was 12 at the time? I did, right?
By the way, I tried to say I'd be there, waiting for.
The Chili Peppers with Anthony Kiedis, who was introduced to the world of sex, drugs, and rock and roll fully by the time he was 12. My dad just took me to hockey practice and for ice cream after. That's just a taste of what else is to come. Stick around. This This program is all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, with heavy emphasis on the sex part. Specifically heavy on the strange sex stories from the world of rock. And don't try to pretend that you're not interested, because I know you are. If you made it this far, you're going all the way. If you're a fan of Duran Duran, you'll know how big they were in the 1980s, the whole Fab Five and all that. And there was no limit to the number of women who were interested in getting to know the band better in those days. Each day on American tours after 1981, the band was issued an itinerary that outlined all the day's activities: when to meet in the lobby, any interviews that had to be done, when the bus was going to leave for the venue, the time for sound check, showtime, all that regular sort of stuff. But there was also a code number on the itinerary. It was right at the bottom. And it read either 18, 20, or 21. Those numbers signified the age of consent for whatever state they happened to be in. It was hoped that they could avoid any awkward legal problems by putting this out in advance. And as far as anyone knows or has said, this was a pretty foolproof system. Fast forward a few years. From 1986 to 2001, Warren Cucurullo was a member of Duran Duran. He'd been a member of Frank Zappa's band. He was also part of an LA group called Missing Persons, and we'll get back to them in just a second. Now, Zappa thought he was brilliant because no matter how difficult an arrangement was, Warren could play it perfectly. And if you know anything about Zappa's music, you'll realize how impressive that kind of skill was. Warren is name-checked 4 times on the Joe's Garage album. For example, he's mentioned in the song Catholic Girls, as well as in the song Crew Slut. That's him buying the leather cap and trousers in Cyborg. Then, in 1980, he became part of Missing Persons, together with drummer Tony Bozio, a Zappa drummer, and Terry's wife, Dale, who also contributed to some of Zappa's work. They got along so well that they started writing songs and formed their own band. Missing Persons had several new wave hits that made them an MTV staple for a while in the early 1980s. Dale was the singer, and she was not shy at all. There were several occasions where she did total nude photo shoots, at least 2 of which were for Hustler in 1979 and 1980. But then in 1986, Missing Persons was falling apart. At the same time, Warren learned that Duran Duran guitarist Andy Taylor was planning to quit the band. When he did, Warren was offered the gig full-time. And like I said, Warren had a 15-year run playing guitar for Duran Duran. That's him on the Notorious album. He co-wrote songs like Ordinary World and injected new life into the arrangements and performances of older songs. It was a really, really good run. But then, in 2001, Warren was asked to leave Duran Duran because the group had received an offer to reunite in their original form. At first, things were amicable with a cash settlement, sort of a severance. And then it got nasty for a bit before things calmed down. Around the same time, Warren took his own plunge into the world of adult entertainment when he showed up naked in a gay magazine in Brazil. That led to other similar photo shoots. This worked out so well that in July 2001, he rebuilt his fan site, which, shall we say, was not suitable for work, because he was essentially doing OnlyFans stuff decades before OnlyFans existed. Even now, if you go to Pornhub, you can find some of Warren's videos, or so I'm told. In 2002, he started selling a sexual aid based on himself. It was called the Rock Rod. Warren's out of the adult business these days. He's back into music, mostly anyway. He's still got a reputation in the adult business. He also got into restaurant ownership and enjoys talking about 9/11 conspiracy theories. But I just wanted to leave these thoughts with middle-era Duran Duran fans and people who might remember Missing Persons with songs like this. You're most welcome. Missing Persons, featuring Hustler centerfold Dale Bozio on vocals and future Duran Duran member and adult porn entrepreneur Warren Cucurullo on bass. I have a couple of stories about Joey Ramone, although they're nowhere near as lurid as what I've already talked about. At his core, Joey was a tremendously gentle and shy sort. I met him many times, and the only word I can use to describe him is sweet. In fact, when my wife met him, she said, "I just want to take him home and make him some soup." When Joey died in April 2001 of complications from lymphoma, he was unmarried and had no kids. He liked women, but had his heart badly broken by a girl named Linda. He really thought Linda was the one, but then she left him for bandmate Johnny Ramone and would later marry him. And Joey never forgave them. The story is that although they were in the same band together to the end, Joey and Johnny never spoke a word to each other after Linda changed teams. Imagine all those long nights in the van with two of the guys in the band refusing to speak to each other for more than a decade. That's one story. Here's another. Apparently, Joey had a thing for a while for girls from mental hospitals. You see, Joey had psychiatric issues of his own. He suffered badly from OCD, and his parents had taken him for examination several times. He was subjected to electroshock treatment. Now that you know that, look at the subject matter of some of the lyrics he wrote for the Ramones. The biggest hint being the song Gimme Gimme Shock Treatment from 1978. And this might be when he started feeling sympathy towards the women he met in those psychiatric hospitals. The rumor was that he dated a number of women with psychiatric conditions, people who were in and out of institutions. It was said that he'd get drunk and hang around these places because, as he said, the girls were all loose there. And it's alleged that he once fell in love with a girl who had weekly electroshock therapy. Is it true? Is it false? No idea. But the story has been out there for decades.
Because I wanna be a boyfriend. Hey, little girl, I wanna be a boyfriend. Sweet little girl, I wanna be a boyfriend.
Celebrity sex tapes aren't a big deal anymore. Oh, sure, they're embarrassing and can be damaging to family and career, but there seems to be so many of them these days that they don't get the attention they used to. So let's run down a few. 1995, the famous Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee sex tape. It was a private thing stolen from a safe in their house and then sold through a company called Internet Entertainment Group. It was one of the first celebrity sex tapes to appear online. 1998, the less famous Pamela Anderson tape with Poison singer Bret Michaels. It was also a private tape that got leaked. 1999, Motley Crue singer Vince Neil. A tape of him and Janine Lundemulder leaked out. Now, she's the porn star nurse that we see on the cover of Blink-182's Enema of the State album. 2005, Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit. Now, 3 minutes of him and his girlfriend was somehow leaked online. Durst sued 10 websites for that, asking for $70 million in damages. 2006, here's another case where the same sex tape helped ruin the career of one guy and didn't touch the other. It was the tape featuring Scott Stapp of Creed and Kid Rock. Now, before you get the wrong idea, it's these two guys with 4 groupies in an RV on a tour bus or something from about 1999. It runs about 45 minutes. And a company called Red Light District, the same people behind the Paris Hilton sex tape, tried to peddle it in 2005. There were lawsuits and the tape was never released. But if you really need to see it, there's always the internet. What makes this escapade a little extra interesting is that the year after this tape was made, Scott Stapp became the first inductee into the Fatherhood Hall of Fame, an honor created by a group called womenforfatherhood.org. They're devoted to recognizing dedicated parents and strong role models. Okay, what about legitimate porn? All right, we've already talked about Warren Cucurullo. Evan Seinfeld, the former singer for the band Biohazard, ran a porn production company with his wife, Tara Patrick, who is an adult film star. The company was called TerraVision. Get it? He directed and performed with his wife in 7 films, and he also ran a website called rockstarpornstar.com. Now, why would he do something like this? Evan said he made more money in the 3 years in the porn business than he did in 20 years playing music. He's no longer in the biz, but remained active behind the scenes. He was involved in a website called Is My Girl, which is where models could produce and sell their own stuff, which was, I guess, a precursor to OnlyFans. Dave Navarro, best known for his work with Jane's Addiction, wrote and directed a porn film entitled Broken for Evan and Tara's company. It stars Sasha Grey. He doesn't do anything X-rated in the film, but he does enjoy this line of work. In 2014, he worked with a BDSM company called The Stockroom to create a guitar strap that can double as a multi-purpose BDSM restraint and sex sling. Fat Mike of NoFX didn't appear in any porn film, but he was engaged to an adult film star named Soma Snake Oil. They bonded over their love of BDSM. Mike and Soma even had a dungeon in their home. In 2014, Mike and Dustin Lanker wrote the score for a BDSM film called Rubber Bordello. And when it comes to the most porny music video, we could, call it Marilyn Manson, Nine Inch Nails, and a few others, but I don't think anything will beat Rammstein. In 2009, they released a clip interspersed with the band, dressed in leather, doing typical porn things, with clips from 6 different porn films. Some include members with the band interacting with adult film stars, while others apparently use body doubles. Let me just say that their record company was not amused. I could play the song in question, but I better not because the lyrics go there in both English and German, if you know what I mean. Instead, let's just be safe and go with this. Before we leave Rammstein entirely, there are more than a dozen rock acts to have released their own lines of sex toys. Rammstein is one of them. Also Gwar, Motley Crue, Ghost, Motorhead, NoFX, which is an inflatable sheep, if you must ask, and appropriately the English punk band The Vibrators. Yeah, I'm still not done. More such lascivious stories still to come. This might be a good time to underscore that we're not passing any kind of judgment with this program. It's, whatever floats your boat, And this story is not weird at all, but it has come up for discussion. For years, Michael Stipe was very guarded about his sexuality. It was assumed by many people that he might be gay, but he chose to remain extremely private about such matters, as is his right. He would later identify, and this is a quote, an equal opportunity lech, and not someone who was straight, gay, or bisexual. Early on in R.E.M's career, Stipe gained something of a reputation of being rather grumpy. He seemed aloof, distant, and really didn't seem to connect with people. But it turns out that there was a reason behind this. According to revelations made to the New York Times in December 2011, Michael behaved that way because he was terrified out of his mind. As a gay man, or somebody who had intimate contact with other men, he was frightened to death that his past behaviors were going to kill him. Here's the quote. Most of the time that I was a pop star, I loved it. But in this period leading up to 1985, I had this complete nervous breakdown and nobody recognized it. The guys thought I was just being impossible. Depression wasn't something that many people talked about back then. Until I was finally able to get an anonymous HIV test in 1987, there was a sense of dread and paranoia every time I got a cold. It didn't help that R.E.M's third album, Fables of the Reconstruction, was recorded in February and March in a very damp and very cold London, England. The weather, the colds that resulted, plus Michael's terror, had a noticeable effect on the music. The album is the band's least favorite and didn't do as well as hoped commercially. And now we maybe sort of know why. Last I heard, Michael Stipe was living with his partner, who is a photographer named Thomas Dozel. They have both homes in New York and Berlin. And finally, we have to touch on Michael Hutchence of INXS. When he was alive, he was always in the company of some of the most beautiful women in the world. Film director Michelle Bennett, singer Kylie Minogue, supermodel Helena Christensen. By the late 90s, the best days of INXS were behind them, but they were still very much a profitable concern. Then came November 22nd, 1997. INXS was home in Sydney, Australia, working on a TV special commemorating the band's 20th anniversary together. After the day's shoot, Michael, his father, and his stepmother went out for dinner at an Indian restaurant called Flavors of India. It was a very normal evening. There was talking and laughing and joking, and everything seemed fine. After dinner, around 10:30 that night, Michael went back to room 524 at the Ritz-Carlton Double Bay Hotel. He joked with 3 girls as he rode up in the elevator. When he got to his room, he called Kim Wilson, an Australian soap opera star and ex-girlfriend. Kim and her current boyfriend drove to the hotel where the three of them drank champagne, daiquiris, and beer in the hotel bar before heading up to Michael's room for a while for a nightcap. They left the bar around 2, and Kim and her boyfriend left the hotel around 4. And that's when we lose track of things. Over the next few hours, Michael made some phone calls, including at least one ex-girlfriend. He never reached anyone in person. All he got was answering machines. Early in the morning of November 23rd, Michael went down to the front desk and asked the clerk on duty to mail some letters he had written. He didn't say much, but the clerk did note that he looked pretty rough. And that was the last time he was seen alive. Around noon that day, housekeeping entered his room. It was a mess. 5 different types of prescription pills had been flung about. The furniture had been heaved around. And Michael was dead. He had been strangled by a belt hung on a door. He apparently died sometime between 9:50 and 10:30 on that morning. The cause of death has been the subject of much debate ever since. One theory is suicide, but there was no note. The other theory is autoerotic asphyxiation, an act where a person is strangled because they say it enhances sexual pleasure. That was the coroner's verdict, and so far it has stood as the official cause of death. One more thing, though. Remember how one of the last people he ever saw alive was Kim Wilson? Did you know that she was the inspiration for this In Excess song? It's freaky. And there are just a few stories from the world of sex, drugs, and rock and roll with heavy emphasis on the sex. I hope you enjoyed. Now, let's be brutally honest. One of the reasons people get into the music business is for the sex and drugs. Most of the time, things are just, well, I guess, fine. But there are always those instances when, well, you know. Notice, too, that I didn't touch on any of the Me Too controversies that have come up over the years. Those stories deal with things that are non-consensual and perhaps even criminal. And that topic is, perhaps, for another time. If you want to dig deeper into music, there are hundreds of ongoing history shows available on demand as podcasts, all free, and you can download them wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, grab a few episodes of Uncharted, Crime and Mayhem in the Music Industry. That's my Music Meets True Crime podcast. And let me know what you think of that. We can connect on most of the social media networks. I'm always updating my website with music news and information. That's a journalofmusicalthings.com. It comes with a free newsletter that you should get. And you can always email me about anything. I'm available through Alan at alancross.ca. Technical production is by Rob Johnston. I'm Alan Cross.